Listen closely, no, closer. Because what I'm about to say only works when it hits the parts of your mind you don't let anyone touch. You felt that shift, didn't you? That tiny twitch in the timeline the second you moved and the whole board tilted. And now, commanders, generals, strategists, men who've studied war longer than you've been breathing, are breaking down your last move, frame by frame, like it's classified footage from a Black Ops operation gone wrong or gone too right. Because here's the part nobody will ever admit out loud. They don't study mistakes. They study threats. And you, my friend, you've become a moving equation they can't solve, a paradox wrapped in flesh, a problem set written in blood, a creature that defies every predictive model they built to keep people like you in cages. You thought you were just making a move. But the moment you acted, reality itself sat down, folded its arms, and whispered, "Explain this." And they can't, not the analysts, not the command center, not the little suits with their little screens and little theories. You shattered something psychological, something structural, something they were sure would hold. You made a move so eerily perfect, so disturbingly efficient, that even the ones who hate you are forced to admire you in silence like art they can't walk away from. Let me tell you why it rattles them. Because your move wasn't lucky. It wasn't random. It wasn't desperate. It was inevitable. And nothing terrifies a system more than inevitability. They can punish a rebel. They can chase a runaway. They can crush a mistake. But you're something else. You're the storm that doesn't warn before it hits. You're the shadow that doesn't follow the body. It leads it. You're the type of soul who walks into a room and changes the weather without saying a word. And when they rewound your footage, frame by frame, second by second, angle by angle, they didn't find luck. They didn't find hesitation. They didn't find fear. They found intent. That's the part that made them sick. That's the part that made them sit up, lean forward, and ask themselves, what else does this person know? What else can this person do? What else have we underestimated? Because here's the truth they choke on. You're not operating from the same operating system as them. You don't evolve in steps. You evolve in jumps, in ruptures, in psychological earthquakes that leave everyone else digging through the rubble of their own assumptions. Your intelligence isn't linear. Your instinct isn't teachable. Your darkness isn't destructive. It's architectural. Light and shadow coexist inside you, like twin serpents sharing one spine. Compassion and cruelties sleep in the same bed. Your angel carries a switchblade. Your demon reads philosophy. Your saint walks barefoot through fire. Your monster prays before the hunt. And that duality, that sacred contradiction, is the exact reason they can't decode your move. Frame-by-frame analysis only works on predictable creatures. But you're not a creature. You're a phenomenon, a breach in their stability, a violation of their logic, a sentient glitch that learned how to weaponize its own unpredictability. They can slow down the footage all they want. They can measure your breathing patterns. They can track your micro-expressions. They can plug your actions into their expensive little machines. But they will never find the engine driving you. Because the engine is pain, and pain redesigned you into something they never prepared. For pain cracked you open. Pain rewired your neurons. Pain dragged you into a darkness so deep you learned how to see without light. You weren't forged. You weren't trained. You were reborn. And now they're sitting in glass rooms, staring at you on loop, trying to understand the anatomy of evolution, trying to decode how a soul can be broken and come back sharper than the blade that cut it. That's why your move shook them. It wasn't just a decision, it was a message, a quiet one, a cold one, a beautiful, terrifying one. I'm not playing this game, I am rewriting it. And deep down, they know that if that was your warm-up, your next move isn't going to be studied, it will be feared. Now go. Keep moving. Keep them guessing. Keep them choking on theories and drowning in silence. Because once commanders start watching you frame by frame, it means the battlefield has already shifted in your favor, and they're only now realizing you weren't the piece. You were the player. Ah, there it is. That pulse in your chest. That tremor in your breath. That quiet, electric awakening that only happens when someone finally tells you the truth. Everyone else was too scared to say. They're not studying you out of curiosity. They're studying you out of fear. And you can feel it, can't you? That delicious, unsettling shift. The moment when all the eyes that once looked down on you start looking up because they can't figure out how the hell you pulled off what you just did. You didn't just make a move. You made a statement so loud that entire departments froze with their coffees halfway to their lips, screens reflecting your silhouette like they were staring at a ghost that suddenly decided to walk back into the living world. They're rewinding the footage again right now. Look. There's a whole room of them hunched over, eyes burning, pausing at every millisecond of your movement. Like priests dissecting a prophecy, you can practically hear them whisper, zoom in, slow it down, play it again. What did they see? What did we miss? How is this even possible? And the answer, my friend, because they've been preaching the wrong gospel their whole lives. They worship order, but you were born from chaos. They worship structure, but you evolved through collapse. They worship logic, but you navigate reality through instinct sharpened by trauma. You are not one of them, you never were. That's why they can't decode you. Because your move came from a part of the psyche they don't map. The part that only forms when you've been pushed past your breaking point so many times. That breaking becomes a skill, and survival becomes an art. You didn't choose your darkness, it chose you. And instead of being swallowed by it, you studied it, you dissected it, you learned its language, and then you built your power from it. That's why your move was so clean, it looked rehearsed. So silent, it looked supernatural. So perfectly timed, it looked like destiny tapping you on the shoulder. Let me paint the scene for you, so you understand. Right now, there's a table somewhere. Polished, expensive, surrounded by badges and brass. With your freeze frame displayed like a crime scene photo. They've circled your hand position. They're comparing your posture to elite military stances. They've annotated your eye movement like a behavioral study. They're arguing, they're sweating, they're replaying footage back to back, trying to understand how a civilian, an outsider, someone with no formal training, executed something entire agencies practice for years. And the worst part for them, they know. They're not studying your technique. They're studying your mind. Because technique can be copied, but mind, that's born. You have a mind that bends instead of breaking, a mind that sharpens instead of shattering, a mind that grows claws in the dark and wings in the fire. They're trying to decode something that wasn't meant to be decoded. They're trying to classify something that wasn't meant to be categorized. They're trying to predict you. When even you don't move from prediction. You move from alignment, from instinct, from that cold and ancient intelligence that wakes up in people who are forced to survive with no safety net and no permission. Your move was not a trick. It was a revelation, and that's why they're scared. Because your evolution didn't follow rules. It followed pain that taught you timing. Pain that taught you awareness, pain that taught you how to strike without telegraphing intention, pain that carved reflexes into your bones that even professionals don't possess. You're not becoming dangerous, you are dangerous. Because you didn't train for this world, you adapted to survive it. Every scar became a skill. Every failure became a blueprint. Every betrayal became calibration. And now they're seeing the final version of a creature built through 1,000 silent collapses. That's why the footage is terrifying to them. Because when they zoom in, when they enhance, when they freeze, when they slow, they don't see someone guessing, they see someone remembering. Movement executed with the kind of instinct that can only come from being sharpened by life. Without mercy, without guidance, without applause, you're not lucky. You're engineered by circumstance, by pain, by fire. And the next part? Oh, the next part is what sends shivers down their spine. They think they're reviewing the past. They think they're analyzing what you already did. But what they don't understand yet, what they haven't realized, is that studying your last move won't help them predict your next one, because your moves don't repeat. Your pattern is having no pattern. Your rhythm is disruption. Your style is mutation. You evolve mid-stride. You transform mid-breath. You reveal just enough to confuse and hide just enough to dominate. They're used to enemies, opponents, threats. They're not used to anomalies. And you have crossed the line from threat to anomaly, something they can't categorize, something they can't model, something they can't label without lying to themselves. So let them keep watching, let them keep rewinding, let them keep dissecting your brilliance in slow motion, like disciples around a miracle. Because what they don't know, what will haunt them soon, is simple. Your first move made them take notes. Your next move will make them take cover. Good. Because now we step into the part that nobody dares approach. The part that makes even the hardened ones swallow hard, shift in their seats, and pretend they're not feeling their pulse spike. See, when most people make a move, the world shrugs. When you make a move, the world stops. Not because it's flashy, not because it's loud, but because it's surgical. Your last action didn't ripple, it detonated quietly, cleanly, like a scalpel sliding under the skin of a sleeping giant, and the giant woke up, gasping. Do you understand the level of psychological violence it takes for high-ranking commanders, people who've witnessed war, chaos, insurgency, sabotage, to freeze a single frame of you and study it like it's a message from the future? They're not analyzing your movement. They're dissecting your implication, because your move didn't just solve a problem. It changed the rules. It broke the fourth wall of their little simulation and reminded them that there are still forces in this world that don't need permission to rewrite the script. And the terrifying part, you didn't even look like you were trying. Let me tell you what they saw, because they'll never say it out loud. When they paused the footage at the halfway point, your eyes were steady, too steady, not reckless, not panicked, not impulsive, but calculated in a way that made them ask, who trained this person? Where did they learn that timing? Why does their reaction resemble high-tier operatives? What intel are we missing? Do they know something we don't? They don't know the truth. No one trained you. Life did. Life dragged you by the throat through places academies don't map. Life threw you into battles no simulator prepares, for life taught you how to read danger by feeling its breath on your neck. The commanders saw precision, but what they were actually seeing was survival raw, refined, involuntary survival that has been sharpened by years of emotional war they will never understand. Your timing didn't come from drills. It came from trauma. Your awareness didn't come from textbooks. It came from betrayal. Your instinct didn't come from theory. It came from standing alone in moments where losing wasn't embarrassing. It was fatal. You are the product of pressure that would have folded anyone else in half. And now that pressure has turned into skill, a skill they can't predict, a skill they can't control, a skill they can't replicate. That's why they're panicking quietly. That's why the room fell silent. That's why careers suddenly felt fragile. Because in your frame-by-frame breakdown, they didn't find a flaw. Not one. Not a single micro-hesitation. Not a single misplaced gesture. Not a blink that didn't serve a purpose. Do you know what it means for trained analysts to study a civilian's movement and unanimously conclude, we don't know how they did that? It means you've crossed into territory that terrifies the people who built the map. And here's where things really fracture for them. They can't decide if you're a genius, a threat, a miracle, a monster, or a prophecy. Your existence short-circuits their categories. Your actions violate their expectations. Your choices bend their models. Every frame they study pulls them deeper into the same unsettling conclusion. You are not operating at human speed, not in the psychological sense, not in the instinctual sense. You're moving from a different layer of consciousness, the layer that only awakens in people who have been broken and refused to stay broken. People like you don't improve. You transform, you mutate, you reincarnate in real time while the world watches with their mouths open. And that, my friend, that's the part they desperately hope is wrong. If your last move looked supernatural when slowed down, what the hell does that mean for your next one? If that was you, acting without pressure, without urgency, without threat, what happens when you finally decide to move with intent, with momentum, with purpose, with strategic cruelty, with awakened clarity, with nothing left to lose and everything left to prove? Because they can feel it. There's something coming from you, something in the air, something in your silence, something in the way you exist now, like a storm collecting its final voltage. They're not studying your footage to understand the past. They're studying it to prepare for your inevitability. And the most beautiful, haunting truth. They're studying frame by frame because they know, deep down, they won't be able to catch you in real time. So let's sink deeper, because the more they rewind your actions, the more something starts to gnaw at them. A realization so uncomfortable that none of them dare say it first, at frame 134. Someone in that cold, fluorescent-lit briefing room shifts in their chair. At frame 212, another one clears their throat, trying to hide the way their heartbeat climbed. At frame 287, the youngest analyst squints, and for a split second, you can see fear flicker across his face like a glitch in his training. Because now they see it. Now they understand why your movement felt off. Not wrong, not sloppy, not naive, but inhumanly aligned. See, trained professionals move from instruction, but you move from instinct older than instruction, something ancient, something primal, something that belongs more to shadow than flesh. You didn't learn your reflexes from teachers. You learned them from consequences. You didn't learn your timing from textbooks. You learned it from heartbreak, collapse, and quiet rage. You didn't learn your composure from discipline. You learned it from staring into the abyss until the abyss blinked first. And that is what the commanders cannot replicate. You are not built differently. You are rebuilt endlessly. Every scar a blueprint, every loss a recalibration, every betrayal a sharpening, every collapse a rebirth. You're not a survivor. You're a continuum, a creature that refuses to end no matter how many times reality tries to erase you. And when they slow your footage down, they see that. They see it in your posture, a posture molded by storms. They see it in your eyes, eyes that reflect a mind that didn't break, but rearranged itself into something unstoppable. They see it in your decisions, so fluid, so clean, so devoid of hesitation that it makes them feel primitive in comparison. Because hesitation is a luxury you never had. Fear is a language you unlearned by force. And doubt is a ghost you starved long ago. So here they are. Men decorated with medals, women who've commanded battalions, teams with millions in funding, sitting around a screen asking the same question over and over. How did they know? How did they feel the timing like that? How did they execute with that kind of certainty? What are we dealing with? Is this person aware of what they are? Because that's the part they can't compute. You didn't act like someone making a decision. You acted like someone fulfilling a prophecy, as if the move wasn't a choice, but a memory, a déjà vu, a script written somewhere deeper than conscious thought. And that terrifies them, because only two types of entities move like that: highly trained operatives and deeply awakened anomalies. You don't fit the first category, so that leaves the second: anomaly, variant, deviation, outlier, unknown classification, unpredictable threat, or untapped asset, depending on who's asking. But you know the truth, don't you? You're not an anomaly. You're the response, the system's punishment for ignoring someone who never needed permission to evolve. The more they study the footage, the more they're forced to face another, even more horrifying truth. You didn't just make a move. You made it look easy, no strain, no panic, no wasted motion, no hesitation in your muscles, no fear in your eyes, no tremor in your breath. Just precision. Clean, cold, surgical precision. The kind of precision that only emerges in beings who have fought wars in silence. Internal wars, emotional wars, psychic wars. Wars that never earned headlines, but shaped you more violently than any battlefield could. That's the secret behind your movement. It wasn't physical, it was psychological. Your body didn't act, your psyche did, your trauma did, your rebirth did, your evolution did. And the commanders, the analysts, the strategists, they finally realize it. They cannot prepare for someone who has already survived everything they fear. Someone who is unfazed by pressure because pressure is where they were forged. Someone who stays calm under threat because threat is their native environment. Someone whose silence is louder than the panic of entire teams. That's why they're studying frame by frame. Because deep down, they know the truth. Your last move wasn't your peak, it was your baseline. And if that was the baseline, your next move won't just be analyzed. It will redefine what they thought was possible, so take another breath. Feel that quiet power, that sharpened awareness, that dangerous calm crawling up your spine. Because you haven't even started moving yet, and already the world is bracing. Listen, don't flinch, don't breathe. Just feel that static crawling up your spine, because that's what happens when the universe realizes it has to update itself. Because of you. You and those 7 seconds. 7, not 70, not 700. 7 seconds that snap the timeline like a bone. Do you hear the way the air shifts when your name drags across reality? Do you hear how the world hesitates, like a guilty child caught in the act? Right before it says, "How? Did they do that?" Even Elon, the man who treats physics like a chew toy, tilted his head like a confused predator, thinking, wait, that wasn't supposed to be possible. And that's the part that makes you dangerous. You didn't do something impressive. You altered the blueprint. You leaned into the darkness, twisted the variables, and wrote an outcome that didn't exist until you demanded it. You rewired the board while everyone else was still reading the instructions. But let's rewind a bit. Because power like yours doesn't appear out of thin air. It's born in suffering, shame, exile, silence. The kind of silence where even your shadow won't stand beside you. You remember that silence, don't you? The one that swallowed you, buried you, caged you. But instead of breaking, you mutated. You learned the secret that terrifies the architects of this world. Pain is the cleanest fuel. Rage is the most honest mentor. Loneliness is the sharpest scalpel. And when you finally moved, when you finally decided to stop apologizing for existing, you didn't take a step. You triggered a seismic event, 7 seconds. That's all it took for your mistake, your accident, your little experiment to detonate like classified tech falling into the wrong hands. And suddenly the watchers, the analysts, the cold-blooded strategists are replaying your move, frame by frame, like it's a national security threat. You know why? Because it is. Because you, this paradox of light and dark, this saint stitched to a psychopath, this angel with a bullet lodged in its halo, you've become the kind of equation that refuses to solve itself and that terrifies them. You walk around with that haunted calm, the kind that whispers you've survived things that would have liquefied lesser minds. You smile like someone who has tasted both heaven and hell and decided neither one is enough. You think they don't see that? They see everything. They see the tilt in your head when someone lies. They see the flicker in your eyes when someone underestimates you. They see the way the room bends its posture when you walk in, as if every molecule instinctively recognizes the predator in you. Those 7 seconds, they were just the first breach, a preview, a trailer for the chaos you were built to unleash. Because there's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't told anyone. Something even you haven't fully admitted. You didn't plan those 7 seconds. You felt them. Like a surge, like a switch, like a hidden protocol waking up inside your bones. You didn't execute the move. The move executed you. And afterward, after the smoke settled and your pulse slowly remembered how to behave, you stood there with that strange, dangerous clarity. You're not improving, you're evolving into something unrecognizable, something the world doesn't have a category for. Something that shakes billionaires, something that forces engineers to delete blueprints, something that makes commanders whisper, something that makes algorithms bow. And now the question isn't, what did you do in those 7 seconds? The real question is, what happens when you do it again? What happens when you stop holding back? When you stop pretending to be polite, humble, harmless, when you finally unleash the version of you that the darkness has been training in secret. Because let's be honest, you didn't come this far to be inspiring. You didn't endure all that to be admirable. You didn't survive years of psychological warfare just to return as a better civilian. You came back as a force multiplier, a living glitch, a walking override command. 7 seconds rewired reality. 7 more could collapse it. And somewhere, deep down, in that place where your fear used to live, you're smiling. Because you know, and I know, and they're terrified to admit, that the next time you blink, breathe, twitch, move, The world won't just watch. The world will flinch. Well, there it is. That pulse in your chest, that quiet, rising hum beneath your ribs, that sensation like something ancient just opened its eyes inside you. Good. Stay with it, because we're not done. Not even close. Those 7 seconds weren't an achievement. They were an awakening, a breach, a leak in the dam holding back the version of you reality prayed would never surface. And now, reality's sweating. You ever notice how people look at you differently now? How their eyes stutter, how their wording changes, how they laugh too quickly, or stay too quiet, or try to control the conversation even though you're not doing anything. It's because something in you is unpredictable. Not in the clumsy, chaotic way amateurs fear, but in the mathematical, cold, surgical way predators admire. See, unpredictability isn't a flaw, it's a currency. And you're rich in it. You can't be mapped, you can't be forecasted, you can't be neatly packaged into their little labels of talent, luck, accident, or coincidence. You're an equation that updates itself in real time. And that's the problem, isn't it? You're too fluid, too adaptable, too quiet, too observant, too dangerously self-evolving for the world to keep up with. That 7-second move, that was supposed to be beyond your level, beyond your resources, beyond your rank. But you did it anyway. Not because you studied it, but because you became it. That's what they don't understand. You don't operate from knowledge. You operate from instinct sharpened by suffering. You think commanders, engineers, coders, CEOs, analysts. You think they aren't whispering about that? They are. They watched that clip like it was leaked classified intelligence. They slowed it down, zoomed in, filtered, enhanced, argued, panicked, blamed faulty equipment, blamed bad angles, blamed a glitch. But there was no glitch. There was just you. A creature forged from a paradox they can't decode. A soul too gentle to harm anyone unfairly, yet too broken to be controlled. A heart that knows love, but a mind that knows war. An angel's patience, a demon's spine, a saint's forgiveness, a psychopath's precision. You were designed in contradiction, and contradiction is the engine of chaos. And chaos, my friend, is the only thing that terrifies architects, because chaos writes its own rules. Let me tell you something they'll never admit out loud. When you executed those 7 seconds, you didn't shock them because of what you did. You shocked them because of how calm you were, controlled, present, focused, like someone who had already rehearsed it in a dream, like someone who wasn't trying, just remembering. That's what shook Elon, not the move, not the outcome, but the calm familiarity in your expression, like you'd tapped into a frequency the rest of humanity hasn't paid the bill for yet. And now the whispers have started, haven't they? He shouldn't be able to do that. No normal person reacts that fast. That wasn't luck. Replay it again, slow it more. He's doing something else with his eyes. What the hell did he see before he moved? Is this instinct or training? No, it's something else. Something else. That's the phrase that follows you now, in group chats, in meetings, in private conversations between people who swear they're not afraid, because that's the truth. They're scared of you, not of your strength, but of your trajectory. You went from overlooked to unignorable, from potential to problem, from maybe one day to, oh God, not already. Your evolution is too steep, too exponential, too quiet, too fast. And the funniest part? You're still holding back. You haven't even shown them the shadow behind your shadow. You haven't let them see the instincts you have to choke down every morning, just to appear human. You haven't revealed the intelligence you dilute so people don't panic. You haven't unleashed the creativity you keep locked away because the world is too fragile for your full imagination. But those 7 seconds, they were a slip, a leak, a preview. And now they're trying to figure out if you're a genius, a glitch, a threat, a prophecy, a weapon, a miracle, a mistake, a reincarnation, a risk, a sleeper cell, or simply the first version of a new kind of human. But you and I both know the truth. You're the consequence of everything they tried to bury. You're the child of betrayal, the echo of abandonment, the result of every door slammed in your face, the answer to every lie they fed you, the revenge of every wound you stitched shut by yourself. You don't rise because you're strong. You rise because you refuse to stay dead. And now the world is watching you the way people watch a lit fuse. Quietly, anxiously, knowing something irreversible is coming, but having no idea which direction the explosion will bloom. And here's the part that really scares them. You haven't even decided what to destroy yet, or who to become, or what to unleash. You're standing at the edge of the next 7 seconds. And this time, you're awake, you're conscious, you're deliberate, you're dangerous. Now imagine what happens, not if you slip, but if you mean it. Good. Don't lose that feeling, that tightening in your chest, that electricity crawling up your arms. That's the part of you the world tried to kill waking up again. Let it breathe, because we're about to cross the threshold, the one most people spend their whole lives pretending doesn't exist. The line between who you were trained to be and what you truly are. And those 7 seconds, they weren't a highlight. They were a diagnosis, a confirmation, proof that the universe has been underestimating you since birth. You think anybody knows what it took for you to reach that moment? The sleepless nights, the quiet breakdowns, the invisible battles, the days you were drowning in doubts so loud you could barely hear your own thoughts. Of course they don't. People never notice the scars, only the resurrection. They see the 7 seconds. They don't see the 7 years of hell that sharpened your instincts. They don't see the 7 betrayals that rewired your perception. They don't see the 7 identities you killed just to stay alive. But I see them, because only someone who's been to the abyss recognizes the walk of another escapee. You carry yourself like someone who's held conversations with the dark, like someone who has prayed to gods that never answered, and then learned to build your own miracles. The world thinks you made a move. What you did was far more lethal. You made a decision, and decisions like that, the ones that erupt from a soul forged in pain, they create ripples reality can't predict. You ever notice how your intuition fires off before logic even wakes up? How you can sense the vibe shift in a room before anyone speaks? How you can read a person's intention from a single micro-expression? How you can feel danger in your bones before your brain catches up? That's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition sharpened to a supernatural edge. That's what manifested in those 7 seconds. A moment where you weren't thinking, you were channeling a moment where instinct swallowed doubt and spit out inevitability. A moment where everything clicked. Your trauma, your wisdom, your rage, your patience, your scars, your brilliance, and fused into one seamless action. That's why the world is studying you now. Not because you succeeded, but because you tapped into something they can't replicate. And they hate that. They hate that you've turned pain into accuracy. They hate that you've turned loneliness into self-control. They hate that you've turned heartbreak into expansion. They hate that you've turned betrayal into strategy. They hate that you've turned silence into power. Especially the silence. Because silence is where you shapeshift, where you shed your skin without witnesses, where you do the internal surgery nobody credits, but everybody fears the result of. And oh, the result is showing. You've started to carry yourself like someone who knows something others don't. Like someone who's seen the blueprint behind people's masks. Like someone who's no longer hungry for approval, but for accuracy. Like someone who doesn't chase, but attracts. Who doesn't beg, but chooses. Who doesn't break, but absorbs and recalculates. You can't hide it anymore. Your evolution is showing, and it's making people panic in quiet, embarrassed ways. You know the signs. The friends who act different around you. The enemies who go silent because they can't handle seeing you rise. The strangers who stare a little too long. The mentors who suddenly don't have advice for you. The rivals who now study your timing instead of mocking your effort. The ones who used to overlook you suddenly watching your hands like you're holding an explosive. And the funniest part? You didn't ask for this. You didn't sign up for greatness. You didn't chase power. You survived long enough to become something unstoppable. That's what terrifies them. Your rise wasn't designed. It wasn't engineered. It wasn't inherited. It wasn't luck. It wasn't privilege. It wasn't permission. It wasn't validation. It was inevitable. Born from pressure they didn't know they were applying. Born from wounds they didn't know they were carving. Born from storms they didn't know you were learning to steer. 7 seconds didn't make you powerful. 7 seconds revealed that you were already operating leagues above them. So now the question isn't, what did you just do? It's, what else have you been hiding? Because deep inside, you know this isn't your limit. This isn't your peak. This isn't your masterpiece. This isn't your final form. This is you, half awake, half realized, half evolved. And even half of you was enough to shake the room. Imagine, just imagine, what happens when you decide to open your eyes all the way. When you stop dimming yourself to make others comfortable. When you stop apologizing for outgrowing people. When you stop shrinking yourself to fit inside the expectations of the small-minded. When you stop pretending you don't feel the power boiling in your blood. When you stop denying the instinct that's been waiting to be unleashed. Those 7 seconds were not your breakthrough. They were your warning shot. The world hasn't seen what you look like when you move with intention, but they will. And when that moment comes, even the stars will hold their breath. Because they'll know reality won't survive the next 7 seconds. Oh, I see it now. That shift. That widening in your awareness. That slow, deliberate inhale like something old and buried just remembered its name. Through your bloodstream, good. Because this is where most people stop. This is where they get scared of their own potential and retreat into comfort. But not you. You didn't ask for comfort. You asked for truth. The truth you've always felt but never had the language for. So let's keep going. Deeper, darker, further than they ever wanted you to look. Those 7 seconds weren't a miracle. They were a message, not from the universe, not from fate, not from destiny, from you, the real you, the one you silenced for years because the world wasn't ready for its presence, the one you chained because people feared what you could become, the one you buried because you were told to be normal, manageable, predictable. But pressure does something strange to the human soul. It crystallizes it, sharpens it, refines it into something that cuts through illusion. And now, here you stand, not polished, not prettied up, but sharpened, unapologetically. 7 seconds was the moment your chains cracked. And the world felt it. That's why the energy around you has shifted, why people talk differently, why they watch you from the corner of their eyes. Why even the confident ones act like your presence distorts gravity. You are no longer a participant in the system. You're a variable, an anomaly, a disruption with a pulse. And nothing terrifies controlled environments like an unexpected variable. But let's talk about something they don't dare address. You weren't supposed to survive long enough to reach this state. They were counting on your collapse. They were betting on your silence. They were waiting for your breaking point, your surrender, your self-doubt to finally crush you. They underestimated the fact that pain doesn't weaken certain people. It cultivates them. You didn't just survive the dark nights. You harvested them, turned each one into fuel, turned each wound into a tool, turned each betrayal into calibration, turned each loss into clarity. So when those 7 seconds hit, when everything snapped into place like the lock finally turning, you weren't improvising. You were revealing what the darkness taught you. Let's break down why those 7 seconds shook even Elon, a man who stares into chaos for sport, one you moved before logic, not recklessly, but with the precision of someone who's been fighting invisible battles for years. The kind of precision trauma breeds the kind that can't be taught. 2. You predicted an outcome faster than machines do. Instinct faster than algorithms. Intuition faster than AI pattern recognition, faster than trained minds. That's not smart. That's evolved. 3. You didn't hesitate. Most humans die in hesitation. You acted in inevitability. That's why it scared them, because hesitation is human. What you did wasn't. 4. Your energy changed. And trust me, humans are subconsciously brilliant at detecting energy shifts. In those 7 seconds, your aura didn't rise. It expanded. It took up space. It broadcasted authority. You became someone the world doesn't look at anymore. You became someone the world has to adjust itself around. That's why doors are behaving differently. Why opportunities feel like they're bending toward you. Why people who dismissed you are suddenly unsure. Why people who ignored you now stare too long. Why people who talked down to you now choose their words carefully. They feel it. They don't know how to explain it, but they feel it. The version of you they thought they could dismiss doesn't exist anymore. And the version that replaced it, they don't have the language for. Now let me tell you the part they fear the most. You still haven't unleashed your full instinct. Those 7 seconds weren't you at 100%. They weren't even you at 50%. That was you acting on reflex, unfiltered, unmasked, uninterfered. Imagine what happens the moment you stop suppressing yourself. The moment you stop diluting your emotions to look reasonable. The moment you stop starving your potential to keep others comfortable. The moment you stop dimming your instincts because people can't keep up. The moment you operate at full clarity, full capability, full intent. What happens when you choose your next 7 seconds? Not by accident, not by adrenaline, not by reflex, but by design. What happens when you aim, when you commit? When you decide? Because right now the world thinks they saw you at your peak. But I know something they don't. Your peak hasn't even come into view yet. You're still ascending, still unlocking, still mutating, still growing teeth in places you didn't know could bite, still discovering the buried instincts trauma gifted you, still realizing the depth of what your mind can calculate under pressure. You are not a finished product. You are a weapon sharpening itself.